The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray.
Good afternoon. You're watching The Republican Zone on Usula Media. I am your host, Drew Murray. I am here with my good friend and political analyst, political consultant, my political consultant on my campaign, Randy Robinson. So welcome, Randy.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a while since
you've been on the show before.
Yeah, I have. So I'm happy and glad to be back. I like the new setup.
Looks good. And remind me of your company.
You look great.
Triple R Consulting?
Triple R Consulting, RRR Consulting LLC.
Nice.
I got the name from then former rep Joe Williams. He's like, I was a lobbyist, and he would go, "Hey, everybody, that's Randy Robinson. You know he's a Republican, right?"
Oh, is that what the R is?
Yeah.
The third R?
Yeah.
I thought you were like Randy Ronald Robinson.
No, because they always call me Randy Robinson, the Republican.
Oh, Triple R. All right, I learn something new every day.
I like that. So thank you, Joe Williams.
Yeah, no, I did not know that. You got your Eagles gear on?
Oh, yeah, it is a Philly thing.
It's a Philly thing. I like it.
It's a Philly thing. We're hoping for big things. It's certainly an exciting year in Philadelphia with this electoral cycle. We're down in municipal elections, so this is where we make some real impact and changes in the city, and then people can really see just the effect of local government.
Yeah.
So now we don't have the whole national Republican Party to throw darts at, and then people can now start to explore the real issues that's confronting our city.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we don't have enough qualified, good Republicans elected. Hope that we get you elected.
Hopefully we'll get a couple in. Yeah,
we can be very honest about the leadership on the left in these municipal elections, and people can really exercise the fact that things aren't great in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have municipal elections. We have the mayor, we have city council, we have controller, sheriff, commissioner's office. There is one statewide, right? There's some judicial, some common pleas, some municipal, and actually we have a Supreme Court this cycle.
Supreme Court candidate. Cycle.
Yep, yeah, there is one Supreme Court candidate. There's an opening. Who passed away? Was it, I forget what the guy's name is. It's going to come to me later, but he passed away, so there's an opening on the Supreme Court.
Well, I do want to take note, and unfortunately, with the top of the ticket being what it is, and this wide open mayoral race, but for us to recognize this really the significance of these judicial races.
Yeah.
They don't get a lot of light, but they're very, very, very important races, and the electorate unfortunately doesn't get a lot of exposure to the candidates, but the things that these common pleas court judges handle are critically important. And then also our Superior Court, because that's where, when we get all the bad decisions out of common pleas, they're bounced up. And a lot of these decisions are reversed at Superior Court. So I implore the electorate really to take it seriously and take a look at these judicial races and just don't go on blind.
And learn about it. I'll be honest with you. If you asked me 10 years ago what the difference between Superior Court was and Commonwealth Court, I would be like, I don't know.
Yep.
But just to learn about it. And it's a pyramid. The Superior Court, Supreme Court's at the top, and then below are two appellate courts, the Superior and Commonwealth.
Yes.
Superior handles. Well, I say Commonwealth handles things about the government, like if there's a case about mail-in ballots or something like that. That's common.
Or the school district.
Yes. Superior Court handles other appellate issues.
Yes.
So, and I'll be honest, this is not a critique of anybody. I didn't know about that 10 years ago. And I said, I need to learn about this because they're so important, these elections.
Yeah, and certainly with the common pleas court, and particularly directly African Americans, who's always fought for freedom, economic injustice, and justice this or justice that, but justice is really meted out by these elected officials whom we have an opportunity to elect. So I employ the electorate to be very cognizant and be very discerning about who you put on these benches, because they render a lot of decisions, and we've seen nationally a lot of these decisions has been very, very, very unfavorable and unfair to the particularly African Americans and poor people. So
and just look, and you touched upon it a little bit. So you're involved in charter schools as part of your consulting business, and there was just a case decided yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, a ruling came down. So one of the issues that, and this isn't a traditional public versus charter issue, it's an issue around poor districts. that we felt that at Harrisburg at the state level that the funding formula was unfair, and that's been an argument that we've carried to Harrisburg for a number of years. That our district, because you just look at the health of a district right across the border in Montgomery County, and then you look at the health of the Philadelphia district, and you're like wondering, like, wow, they're all public schools, but it's such a great disparity.
Sure.
This suit was filed a number of years, and it was rejected, and was refiled again. And this time that the court, the judge, I think it was at the Commonwealth Court judge, I think Judge Jubileer, whose husband is the wife of former Senate Pro Tempore Jeff Jubileer.
Okay.
I'm not Jeff's son, but Senate Pro Tempore Jubileer, his wife, made a ruling that it was unconstitutional, our funding formula. So I'm not sure if in fact it's going to be kicked up to the Supreme Court, but we've got some footing to really, for the first time, acknowledge that there has been a really injustice to the hundreds and thousands of students who've matriculated to our public school system. So this really has a potential for hundreds of $1 million windfall for those. I think it was 8 designated districts that were named plaintiffs in the suit.
Okay.
But it certainly bodes well for an opportunity for some economic redress for Philadelphia public schools.
And the reason for it is, so we fund our schools through real estate taxes.
Yes.
And I will be the first person to say that the school district of Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia, we don't necessarily manage our funds well. But as a municipal big city,
that's setting aside.
Yeah, we're as a municipal big city, we're going to have larger levels of poverty because that's just the way things are. It's been like that forever, and we are the poorest of the largest big cities in the nation with a 23% poverty rate. So that means that money coming in from the real estate taxes is not going to be as much per student as it would be in, let's say, Lower Merion Township.
Well, and also till you combine that over the past few years where we had these incentives for developers and builders, and people got tax breaks for new constructions, and it kind of our higher earners are not paying as much on tax.
Well, I'm in favor of the tax abatement, so
Well, the tax abatement, I think it's had its legs, and it was important and significant, but I think it had come to a time of balance. But that's not the overall crippling aspect of the economics.
And the fair funding formula would bring more money at a state level to the school district.
Philadelphia, absolutely. That's the biggest culprit in it. You look at the other districts around the Commonwealth. One of the issues that we actually have too many damn school districts in the Commonwealth. But nonetheless, a lot of the districts, their boards are elected, and they have the ability of taxing, so they can look at what their appropriations that comes from Harrisburg, and then they can kind of adjust with it at county level by instituting a tax. But our school board doesn't have the ability to tax. So it's all set upon largely just the appropriations through Harrisburg, and then what we can appropriate through city council, which we hope to have a wise young councilman on soon. I mean, well, not that there aren't any, but we need you, Drew.
Sure.
But they can only, tax, to a degree. I mean, in terms of appropriate to a degree in terms of the revenue they're bringing in, and it's based off our real estate tax formula. So overwhelmingly, our city has been too poor for too long to keep up with the appropriation needed for an equitable amount of dollars going into public education, particularly when you're looking at all the other interests in the city that demands large portions of our budget, Department of Human Services and also policing for public safety, because these are critical issues. So you're put in a very difficult position in terms of council person when you're deciding where do you attribute the resource, the few resources that we have here, into what issues that's going to, be the best for the whole of the city. So public education sometimes gets, kind of squeezed in a box. I mean, it's critical to a 21st century city, and just to have educated kids. I mean, educated folks. that draws in employers, better educated young people, individuals, reduce the possibility of being involved in crime.
Sure.
It just makes everything whole and better. But you see the number of kids who actually are actually enrolled in public schools to about 200-something thousand now. And there's great competition in education because we do have the charter school system, we have online learning, we have the parochial system, we just have independent schools. And then we also have some fantastic private schools here.
Sure.
And there's ways that, they're being very ingenious in terms of how they can make it affordable for, working up and working class
Sure.
individuals. And you just don't have to be rich to go to these private schools.
No, everyone thinks people who go to these private schools are all rich. It's absolutely not true. Look, I went to St. Joe's Prep. I went for free because my dad taught there. But I will tell you that even at St. Joe's Prep, there were plenty of people who were not rich, who were there on full scholarship or got enough aid to go there. And we talk about the poverty level in Philly. I always say we're not going to legislate ourselves out of poverty. We need to educate ourselves out of poverty.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that starts at universal pre-K, that starts in grade school, and you're very much involved in charter schools.
Yeah, charter school, it's a critical element because unfortunately our public school system is kind of, it has some problems that won't be fixed overnight.
Yep.
Largely the real estate stock, which is the buildings that are our schools, like 75% of them are over 50 years old. An incredible cost in terms of repairs, just to repair the roof, making it asbestos-free, making it lead-free. So that cost is phenomenal. And then you have the rising cost of just goods and services and healthcare costs for our fine teachers. So you're looking at a system that's going to take some time really to self-correct it, and I'm not sure if we can. If you look at just the issue of public education just across the country, I think the model that we've instituted and been utilizing for the past 50 years exactly doesn't fit the society that we live in now, but we still have it. We have to afford it. So you look at these schools who are, physically in disrepair, and then you look at the quality of education, and particularly with 50% of black and brown and poor boys not graduating. You look at the product, and then you say, hey, do I sacrifice my child, whatever, while we try to correct this issue?
You can't,
like I have an opportunity if I go to one church and I don't like what's happening, I can choose to go elsewhere. I can choose one political party, and but I don't like what's happening, I can go elsewhere. Why must I be trapped into this one decision in terms of, particularly people who just don't have the economic viability to utilize these other, to go to a private school or parochial school? Why should I be trapped into this one decision where I go? And unfortunately, the argument, really underlying argument is not that should we get this opportunity to all children, particularly poor children, but it's an argument about adults because it's about labor, because the charter school institution is not non-union, non-labor.
Not always. There are some union teachers at some charter schools.
Yeah, at some, but largely the pushback on it is political. It's coming from the PFT because they say more charter schools is taking away our jobs. But, parents aren't and children aren't remanded into charter school.
Yeah, they're
parents
choosing.
choose.
And I'm absolutely a firm believer in school choice. We're going to take a quick break.
Yep.
We'll be back in a minute. You're watching, I should say, the Republican Zone on USALA Media. Welcome back. You're watching the Republican Zone on USLA Media. I'm here with my friend Randy Robinson. We're talking about right now school choice,
Yes.
public, charter, independent, parochial, and it
Yes.
is a political issue now. Most, I would say, not all Democrats are opposed to charter schools, but I think they're starting to lean that way. Most Republicans, if not all Republicans, are for school choice, meaning charter versus public. I mean, the independent and parochial is kind of a different issue, and that we could theoretically talk about with public money going to vouchers and things like that.
Unfortunately, particularly in the African American community and our Black elected officials, they're like kind of in a really interesting position politically, because again, the political argument is either you're pro-labor or not pro-labor, but also and labor has been very, very kind to African Americans, and you see African American labor leaders in very critical aspect of Philadelphia in terms of how we operate and who's actually living in the city and generating tax base. So our labor force is very, 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 very necessary. So politically, you're going to want to be supportive of labor because of their impact in the lives, of African Americans in this city. My mother and father were both union members.
Okay.
DC 33 and TW Local 234. So you go to office and say, hey, it's been my political support, but then you're also responsible for the well-being of your community, and you're knowing the schools in your district and your neighborhoods are failing. And do you tell those citizens of your community, like, hey, do you have no choice? No. So they look at, and they've seen some charter schools come into communities and have been a breath of fresh air, been a great community partner, and also given an opportunity for those kids that attend those schools to be able to compete in 21st century global world that they're going to grow up.
Sure, you can't tell a 5-year-old, or you can't tell their parent, your neighborhood school is failing, but too bad.
Yeah,
you don't have any other
absolutely.
choice. They can't wait until that school gets better. They have to put their child in a school that works for them now.
When you get further and further away from speaking about the significance of public education, when you get farther away from talking about the child and the performance, and the farther away you get from the kid, you get into the issues of the economics and labor and jobs and adults. That's where the problem exists, because then you have people who are making decisions or boxed into positions that are political as opposed to what's best for citizens. So I'm not for every charter school. I'm for good performing charter schools. I'm for good performing public schools. I just think that the public school system, the traditional public school system, as we stated, firstly, certainly underfunded. From the beginning is underfunded, and they just have issues that they haven't addressed in terms of their capital improvements, that they're sitting on a lot of real estate that they just cannot fix. And then you're looking at the other systemic issues of poverty, and then you see our children are coming to school less ready for, readiness and preparedness are the keys for learning. You want your kid to be ready, and you want the school to be prepared for them, so we can come in and we can just have a very good academic performance day. But that's not the case as much anymore. So we need to look at what can we do, what can we create, so that the children who are in attendance, who are school-age kids, aren't left behind. We just can't allow them to suffer while we adults try to figure it out. So, almost every elected official, particularly a Democrat, who represents a poor African-American district, when I talk to them personally, they're not against charter schools. They're like, hey, the ones who perform well in my district, the kids go there, their parents go, their parents are very happy about it, they're invested. I can't say, hey, I'm against it. So
I think a few council people now have children in charter schools.
Yeah, so
I won't list them because I don't want to get.
Yeah, so I think that we gotta just reduce the hyperbole and the battle of public versus charter.
Well, they're both public schools.
Because charters are public
schools. Absolutely.
So and we got to look at how can we. I think it'd be better in terms of a collaboration, because here's the thing: the charter schools have the ability to do that the district is kind of handcuffed with. Charter schools have the ability to issue bonds, and they have a greater opportunity to build new buildings. I think that's one of the largest concerns of public education right now, is the facilities that we're in. So the charter school networks actually have an opportunity to go out and build new buildings, and I think we can figure out
buy beautiful ones like String Theory does.
Oh yeah,
in the old
absolutely.
GSK building.
They
yeah.
got a plan that they wanted to build about 10 schools, 15 schools in West Philadelphia. And I think they're going to come out with this $1 billion plan of how do we build new schools. Sure. I think that if we have an opportunity with all the hands in, and because everybody is vested in public education, that we can build new structures, and we can create curriculums that are modern day. I mean, you got to have STEM and STEAM, and then also CTA. So, we got to just put our egos aside and put these nonsensical arguments aside that's separating us, and get very serious and real about public education in the city.
And this next election coming up is going to
critical,
be huge for charter schools, for public schools, in my opinion, I hope they reverse the decision of how magnet schools are pick their students, I will say.
Yeah.
And where I should say how they don't pick their students, because there's a lottery system now. The mayor, city council, and this is something I just learned from you, so now the school board will be picked by the next mayor.
Yeah, so now, for the first time, we had the SRC for a number of years, and it was a fight that we should return to local control. I like that, great, but we got to have a local control that makes sense. So now, with our school board, the mayor now has an incredible power. This mayor gets to pick his school board.
Or her.
Or her, yeah, absolutely. It's a very large chance.
I think that was subliminal of someone that you might not want to be mayor.
Yeah, well, because there's one who's been very, very clear that she's been anti-charter and just pro. I don't know if she's even pro public school, because she gives the school administration a lot of help. She's just been pro PFT. And to me, that's just short-sighted. And
someone who founded a charter school,
yeah,
by the way.
Well, let's not talk about the conflict and the irony of it all, that she's so public, so pro want to force you into these public schools. But she's the founder of one. Her husband's on the board. And actually, during COVID, her school was the only charter school that got an increase of number of students, that 300. And I'd actually, that she's out trying to be a warrior for Black and brown and poor people, but look up the racial makeup of her school. How many Black and brown kids are in that charter school? So I'm not understand. So there's a concern about the wellness and the survival of just charter schools going forward, if in fact if Ms. Gim becomes mayor. Is
she the biggest? Is she the only fear? Is everyone else kind of not taking a strong position one way?
I think most of them are either just understanding and receptive, and they want quality public education, and they don't care what it looks like, because the citizens in the city needs it. It will solve so many of our issues, particularly around economics and public safety. We got to have an educated workforce locally, but she's the only one who's taking a hard stance to, has been just abating the existence of charter schools, blaming them for all the issues and concerns and all the ills of public education. It's them over there. Meanwhile, while she founded one, her husband's still on the board.
Sure.
So you're saying what's good for you and your community, it's not good for everyone else. So anyway, but this mayor has an opportunity to select 9 new school board members.
Do we think that's what will happen, or will just some? I mean, is he or she? Do we think it's just going to just clean sweep and bring in?
Yeah, city council actually going to change the rules so that they used to have staggered terms, but they wanted to align it so that the mayor had the ability to govern over his own board and have a greater power and say in how public education is being meted out here in the city. That you're taking the hits for it. I mean, the superintendent takes some hits up for it, but
I hope they reverse.
I
hope they reverse the policy that they instituted last year, the night before applications went out, and I was affected. And the magnet school process.
One of the other issues with our schools in their administration is that we've had years of unfair policies and practices and poor practices, and then we just go in and try to fix it, and then institute another poor practice
Yes.
that creates even more.
And what that is,
concerns.
for people who don't know, is, schools like SLA, like Central, like Masterman, it was purely merit-based, was how the students were picked who went to those schools. Last year, they instituted two things. And again, the night before applications went out, they instituted two new rules. Number one, some schools had weighted zip codes, and others went into a lottery system, meaning you could qualify for SLA, but then they're going to pick names out of a hat in order to determine who was in that school. So it's not purely merit-based. I know my daughter wanted to, she loved Science Leadership Academy. That's,
Yes.
Group-based learning, tech, STEM. That's exactly what she loves. And we did apply. She's a straight A student. There is absolutely zero chance she would not have gotten into Science Leadership Academy the year prior if she was in eighth grade a year prior, but she didn't get in because of the lottery system, and it's completely unfair. There were students who worked their butt
it's
off.
completely unfair.
I think it's
certainly
completely
unfair. It'd be unfair to your daughter and her performance, because the city. I mean, once again, we try to overcorrect some issues related around race in the city, and unfortunately, we often take a poor tack just to satisfy certain dynamics. And Black and brown and poor kids have been treated unfairly within the public school system by their underrepresentation in some of these magnet and good schools. Yes, but the answer isn't to self-correct that, but that would be unfair to non-black, Black and brown students. So you get injustice for 25 years. Okay, we flip it.
Yeah.
Now the other side will be unfair to them for 10 to 15 years.
It's not merit-based. Instead of looking at the root cause of the problem and saying, you know what, some of these neighborhood schools aren't good.
Too
and
often
many,
in the past, if it was truly a merit-based system, I wish it was, but too often in the past that the merit-based system was circumvented.
That's true as well, yes.
And that's when you got the underrepresentation of certain demographics in these schools, because they had ways in terms of just navigating the merit base and kind of just self-select whom would have these seats.
City council members always seem to get their children into magnet schools back in the
Well,
day.
once again,
let's be honest, yes.
Yeah, well, once again, if you're in a favorite class of citizen in this city, you can navigate around a lot of the rules, and that's really what the problem is. Is not the rules; it's the loopholes in the rules.
Sure,
it's the non-compliance to the rules, and then you go and try and fix it, and unfortunately, your fix comes with as many holes in it as
and I love Michael
original
Nutter, so
issue.
this is not disparaging him, but I remember when he ran for mayor, he was like, my daughters have gone to public school, the entire way through, and I'm like, well, your daughters went to a magnet school. I think it's a little different, and I'm not, look, I'm sure they were smart, and they deserve to go to this school,
And that's
I'm not saying, but it's like
one of my it's one of my defenses of charter schools. He said, well, we have traditional school, these charter schools is taken away. I said, well, the Philadelphia public school system has always ran a small cluster of charter and select schools within the public school system prior to, and they called them magnet, and again they were merit based, and you get to kind of select who goes there, and again this merit-based system has lots of loopholes and navigations around it.
And I always say Masterman's is a private school that just is free for the people who could go in there. It's as good as any private school in this area.
Oh, absolutely, it's
and better than most.
Institution, and it's always been one of the top learning centers in the Commonwealth.
I would say in the country.
In the country, yeah, but. How do you get into math? I mean, you look at the names and the relatives of the kids that go there, you start to wonder.
Not all, but
is it truly just merit-based? So, again, we got to get focused on what's going to be best for the health of the city, and having a vibrant public education system, and however that's constructed, that's what has to happen. We need to get beyond ourselves and our egos and cast aside a lot of these platitudes, positions, party positions, economic status positions, and realize that if we don't correct this, we won't have a great city to live in.
Absolutely. We need every kid who goes through whatever school system, whether it's private, parochial, public, charter, when they finish high school, they need to be prepared either to go to college or we're into the trades, or they need to be prepared to go out into life in one way or the other. And that is not always college. Sometimes it is go into a trade school.
Minimally, if nothing at all, when we send kids to our K-12 system, they got to come out with at least some hope to compete in the world and make a living for themselves.
Absolutely.
So if you look at what's happening in our streets and public safety, is direct manifestation of several decades of failed public education, because now you're looking at violent crimes. They're committed by high school age kids during high school hours.
And some of them are high school kids themselves who are the victims.
And absolutely, and the high school kids are either potentially to be the next person shot or the next shooter.
At Roxborough High School, young Nicholas Elizalde was shot.
We got to
get
get serious about what we're doing with them.
Yeah.
If in fact, and the only thing that does that is that they have an opportunity and they have hope. So, those kids are committing crime. It's on them, but their hopelessness.
Well, it's on them and their parents. I say.
It's on them and their parents. But your parents, at 20-something years old, and also product of a failed public school education, so they're not valuing the public school experience and don't connect the dots to a healthy education, to success in life and preparedness, because it hasn't worked for them. So
That's right.
They don't believe it's going to work for their children.
So we're going to have you come back just to talk about crime and
Yeah,
crime rate. We'll talk about. I could talk about Larry Krasner for an entire show.
Yeah, because it's bigger than crime rates.
Yeah.
I'd come back and talk about the causations of what's actually creating crime. So, what makes a 12-year-old become a shooter?
So thank you again for coming on. I'd say I'm going to see you soon because I'm going to talk to you almost every day. But thanks for coming on. We'll have you back on again.
I look forward to it.
And we're getting ready for petitions.
Yeah, and we're getting ready for big Super Bowl wins.
That's right, and that's right. So we'll talk about the Eagles next time too, after the big win. So thank you for watching the Republican Zone on Usula Media. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray,